Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Humza Yousef must be living in a little world of delusion. He's drawn a line under the iPad case. He says it is now closed. No, Humza, that's not how it works. It's closed when other people say it's closed, not you. You are the one who wants it closed because you know how damaging it is and you really, really hope that people will stop asking and move on. You call it a distraction. We call it potential fraud or potentially much worse. It must come to the head. It must be examined and it must be made clear exactly the sort of person Michael Matheson is. He may well be completely innocent and all of it is governmental and constituency use, like he claims. Or, at the very least, it's just fraud. Unfortunately, nobody believes it's just fraud. Everyone believes it's far, far worse. And Humza Yousef is aligning himself with this man who may yet be in deep, deep trouble. Let's look at the story, see what's going on. So, Humza Yousef tries to keep his pal in a job as he claims Michael Matheson's scandal is closed. No, it isn't closed. Until that iPad is handed over, until it is independently checked, until we know that it was all government and constituency use, it is not over. At the very least, if he's put that claim in and he's had the money and there's anything on there for which it is private use, even innocently, then it's fraud. But we all know in our heart of hearts that it isn't just fraud. There's something so desperately bad on there that Matheson cannot risk that iPad ever being examined. The First Minister attempted to defend his government colleague and close personal friend by claiming that the scandal surrounding his £11,000 iPad expenses was now finished and that any attempts to continue it was an unhelpful distraction. It's not an unhelpful distraction, it's the search for that thing that the SNP fears most, the truth. Humza Yousef has attempted to shut down the debate surrounding Michael Matheson by claiming that the matter of his massive phone bill is closed, but is being accused of changing his story in order to keep his chum in a job. By chum we need bum chum. Matheson is already facing a vote of no confidence after refusing to give up his device so it can be independently investigated after he racked up this huge bill. And he tried to claim this as an expense, meaning that the public purse paid for it and that we shouldn't have to pay for his tossing off, should we? However, following newspaper reports about the scandal, he was shamed into confirming that he would pay back this in full from his own £120,000 a year ministerial salary. But he stuck by his story that he only used the iPad for constituency and parliamentary work. Well, if that's the case, then he's got nothing to fear. Hand it over. Prove that what you say is true, and then the matter is closed. But that isn't what's happening, is it? And the very fact that he won't hand it over shows how guilty he is. Anyway, the Scottish Tories have threatened to lodge a no confidence motion in the SNP minister if he refuses to submit the device to investigation after he claimed it had already been scrutinised, and will lodge it on Thursday. But of course his claim of scrutiny is absolutely BS. It's absolute horseshit because it wasn't scrutinised. They've already had the authorities confirm that it was just taken in his word. They didn't look. They didn't look. So this scrutiny of which he claims never happened. But hey, is anyone surprised that he's lying? Anyway, Matheson blamed massive bill on using an out-of-date SIM card on the device despite repeated warnings from Holyrood to switch them. And he also failed to tell him he was flying abroad, which is against official guidance. You don't take material like that, your iPad and that away, because on it will be, of course, very confidential information. doesn't leave the country, and certainly not to a country that is deemed high risk according to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Now the First Minister has attempted to shut down any further debate about the scandal, claiming that his colleague had made an honest mistake. He added, "For me, the matter is now closed." Well, that's up to you, mate. That's up to you. But for everyone else, the matter is not closed. The answers must be clear. They must be, made public. And the contents of that iPad must be scrutinised. He has agreed to pay back every single penny of that expense, said Humza Yousef. Said even though Parliament wasn't asking him to do so. No, but his own conscience was. Not the conscience that said, "Oh, I might have done something wrong, let me repay it." But his conscience saying, "Oh, for heaven's sake, I can't afford to go to jail." To me, he said, that is a line drawn under the matter. Mr Yousef even labelled the potential no confidence vote an unhelpful distraction. But his health secretary has still got a mountain of questions he needs to answer about the bill, which means that the scandal is unlikely to abate. Of course it's not. Nobody is going to let this go. They know that they've got the SNP on the run over this, and the longer they drag it out and the harder they defend it, the worse it is going to get. Anyway, he's agreed with Parliament in January that the bill will be paid out of the public purse, with his office picking up 3,000 of it. But following the negative reaction, he agreed to pay it back in full. Very, very odd behaviour, because if it is, as he claims, completely legitimate, why is he paying it in full? And why is he doing it so quickly? Is it anything to do with the fact that people asked for it to be scrutinised? Well, yes, obviously. Ooh. Anyway, Mr Yousef even backed his colleague up last week before he announced his U-turn, claiming it was a legitimate expense. That's fine, Humza. If it's a legitimate expense, show people it is a legitimate expense. Let's not have this area of doubt and uncertainty. Let's clear the matter up. You want the line drawn under it? Fine. Hand it over. Let's have it independently scrutinised to show that it is a legitimate expense and that you have got nothing to worry about. Easy, isn't it? Anyway, there is Hoy. He's saying that the confidence vote could be tabled tomorrow, and we do absolutely want to see that vote. Scottish Conservative Chairman Craig Hoy called the First Minister deluded, as indeed did I, if he thought he could end the scandal through his comments, and said that he is saying anything to keep his pal in a job. He added last week he insisted it was a legitimate expense that the Health Secretary had no need to pay. Today he's claiming to pay it back. The case is closed. It's not. Humza Yousef knows perfectly well that the only way for Michael Matheson to retain a semblance of integrity is by handing over the iPad to Parliament's IT department so they can check its browser history. That is the only means of verifying Michael Matheson's assurances that the roaming charges were accrued solely on constituency work. And he won't hand it over because it's quite clear that that is not the case. So that means when he did put the claim in, the money he's had, it was a fraudulent case. It was a fraudulent charge. And even though he's willing to pay it back, doesn't negate the fact that he committed fraud. He broke the law. He needs to pay. And that is just that thin edge of the wedge, because who knows what he was looking at. And we all know it was P-Hub, or worse. It was that, wasn't it? Anyway, they said if he fails to take the action, which is to hand it over, which is clearly in his own interests, he said the public will draw their own conclusion on what he's trying to hide. And of course we are. We're drawing the worst possible conclusion, but probably a very accurate conclusion. And so he's going to have this no confidence motion. Well, I don't have confidence in him. You don't have confidence in him. We all know exactly the sort of person he is, laying there, knocking one out, trying to be the voice of reason, a moral authority. Look at them, they're so good. And they're trying to draw a line under it. There is no line. It's got to be handed over. He's got to give that to the authorities, and then he's got to accept that he is just a bit of a tosser. Now, hopefully it will be just fraud. Just fraud. Because if it's anything else, it means children have suffered, and we don't want that. Anyway, I shall stop there, come up and finish, but we shall leave the little fondler and Ken doll to carry on their little loving as one protects the other from the true consequences of what he has done. Here he goes. I just love the fact that he thinks we're listening to him, that we will stop asking questions simply because he doesn't want us to ask any more questions. The man's a fool. Of course we're going to ask questions. We need to know the answers. And until those answers are forthcoming, people will continue to ask the questions. We all know what we think of Michael Matheson. His whole political career now is shot because everyone just looks at him and sees what they want to see. They don't see a decent man with integrity, with morals. They see a degenerate piece of detritus, put it nicely. They see someone who's watching possibly the very worst of videos, who gets off on it, and certainly was laying there in a Moroccan bedroom, a hotel bedroom, pants round his ankle, probably grey Y-fronts round his ankle, and tossing off his rather inadequate penis, because it's all he's got to do in his empty, pathetic little life. That's with his right hand, anyway. What an awful, awful piece of filth. Anyway, we stop there, and we'll draw an end to this. We'll put the line, but only under this video. This story isn't going away, is it? Anyway, speak soon. Thank you, and goodbye.